Good evening, good afternoon for anyone in the US. Welcome to this webinar from CareerWise. My name is Jonathan Ratner, and I'm just putting up my presentation and we'll get started. We're talking today about from seminary to success. Of course, success is a term that's defined in many different ways. We're talking about fulfillment in Avodas Hashem in a professional way, in a personal way, education, career, how to start life as a from young adult, and particularly from the perspective of parents supporting your daughter's next steps. So let me present. Okay. So just to briefly introduce myself, where I'm coming from and what we do. My wife and I opened CareerWise over a decade ago. I'm a Rosh Kollel. I am a teacher. I have taught this year in seminary in Maor. The head of Maor, Zachariah Greenwald Shlita, is my mechutin. My daughter is married to his son. We live in Harnov in Yerushalayim. And we have opened a career counseling center and a professional training center, an online professional training institute where we train people in professions that they can learn online and work wherever they are. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that later, but I do want to focus on our topic tonight. So here's our agenda: transition and choosing a pathway, the role of parents, professional inclinations of each person, entering the workforce. I'm going to give you some real life examples and I'll draw conclusions. I'll be happy to take any questions. So here we go. So it's this time of year. The young women are coming home from seminary, and they certainly have to ask themselves, what do I do now with the rest of my life? It's a time of exploration, establishing an adult identity as a from person. The age, they're around 20 years old. I taught Shana Base women, so people who had spent 2 years in Eretz Yisrael. So that much more of an experience of growing and asking themselves questions, having a lot of support. Of course, the year in seminary is very intense and a lot of structure, a lot of classes. They met a lot of wonderful Rebbitzins and Rebbeim, and the Koisel was around the corner, etc. And now they're back in, quote, real life, whether in America or wherever they are. And so it's obvious, Shidduchim is certainly on the horizon, but that's not a full-time job. So what are they going to do? So in terms of career counseling and helping young people to make a plan for a life pathway, three questions. And there's the diagram I have here in a very simplistic way is called an ikigai, based on a Japanese word. And it starts with the question, what do I like to do? And that, do I like to solve math problems? Do I like to write stories? Do I like to paint? Do I like to teach kids? Do I like to bake? What am I good at? It may be that I like to do it, but I'm not very good at it, or something that I'm good at, but I don't really like. So we're looking at the intersection between those two things. And the third, it could be some of the things that I like to do, but nobody's going to pay me to do that. So the third question is, what does the market pay for? So this is a realistic question, practical question. If I need to earn a living, so how am I going to do that? What are the things that I like to do and that I'm good at that the market will reward me for? So now we're talking at an intersection of three different spheres that can lead to a beginning of creating a pathway, and then we could set some goals. So let's see where we go with that. Oops, went backwards. Okay, so in addition to internal things like what I'm good at, what I love, and the external questions of the market, there are pressures, there's concerns, there are community expectations that, again, these are young women, so the whole world is in front of them and they're just finishing being a child. And so they don't know yet. They may not have the self-confidence. Can I be a good mother while I'm working if I get a job? Am I going to be able to earn enough to support my husband? What about if we're going to spend time in Koilel and Eretz Yisrael? How will I work there? Or are we going to move there? Whatever. A question of status, is that a chashuv job that what I'm thinking about? Am I going to be stuck in a goyish environment? I wouldn't feel comfortable there. And that's something definitely to think about when we're speaking about very young women. A difference between women in their 20s, let's say an unmarried woman, versus a woman maybe in her 30s who already has a family and is more well established in her adult persona. So maybe then she wouldn't be intimidated by being in a non-Jewish environment. But for starting out, that is definitely something that might be an anathema or something scary or something to be avoided. So I have a picture here of swans and their ducklings. Being a parent for little children it can be somewhat, okay, it's hard work, but it's very clear what you need to do and how to build up your kids. Being a parent of this age of people in their 20s and of young adults and helping them to make plans and to execute on their plans is more challenging. And so I want to talk about that today. In fact, I wanted to give a shout out to my own parents. My parents, Baruch Hashem, are elderly. They're wonderful people in Cleveland, Ohio, and they were great parents and are great parents. And so I feel, whatever professional training I have, I do have a master's degree, and we are running a career counseling center. But I had really wonderful parents, and so that gives me some insight into being a parent. Baruch Hashem, I have 9 wonderful children and a bunch of grandchildren, and my children are Baruch Hashem very successful. So I know something about parenting. So here are some concepts that I want to share with you. The first is your daughter has come home from seminary. She's been through this sort of life-changing experience, and she's now looking towards her future. And so the first thing is to listen. And listening is an active, it's not a passive, it's an active listening, attentive listening, but without judgment and without pressure. So that's tricky. To be engaged without trying to project myself onto my child. So recognizing my child is not me. My child is their own person, and they have their own values and their own way of seeing things. We can share, we can talk, we can discuss, but it's not like I own them because I don't. You want to encourage responsibility and dependence. That's part of this maturation process, that your children are coming into their own. They're coming into their own domain and serving a Kodesh Baruch Hu in their own way. Chanoch l'nor pidarko. They're developing their own way. And that's okay. And that doesn't have to be identical with your way. So in terms of professions and careers and ideas of things a place they might go to study or to work, so you want to help screen the opportunities that maybe it's glitters. It looks like, oh, it'd be a lot of money or it'd be really prestigious, but would that really fit with their Torah values? So it is okay to present them with that question and help them deal with it and sort of work that out in their own mind. Because you want to build their own self-confidence, right? You don't want them to remain dependent their whole lives or be doubting themselves. You want to give them a sense of self-confidence, a can-do feeling of I can do this. One of the main things we do as career counselors is to help people to connect to their own core values. If you know what's driving you and what you really want, what do you dream about? What makes you tick? What makes you excited? So if you connect a person to their dreams and to their inner core values, that itself helps put them on their feet towards accomplishment, achievement, and success. So that's something a parent can do. So some things have changed. We're in a unique time in history, what's called the information age, and and these are changes that don't really have to do with our community, and certainly the Torah is eternal, but technology has changed greatly. And I'm 57 years old. The job market is very different today than it was when I was a young person. And so I want to talk about some of the things that changed. Our forefathers, our Avos HaKadoshim, were shepherds. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Yosef Tzaddik. They came to Paro and they said, we've been shepherds always. But I don't think today you're going to pay for day school education working as a shepherd. So things have changed. So we need to respond and navigate today's job market and its opportunities with our eternal perspective, but with the savvy of today's technology. So that's what I want.
Mute your phone. What about my phone?
I'm gonna mute
I have
everybody.
my phone.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So we're talking about our Torah values are eternal, but technology is not. And technology is heating up. The new thing that we're all talking about is AI. It's revolutionary in some respects. Computers are able to think like people, to solve problems, to do a lot of our work for us. And so people who will learn how to harness these skills will have a great advantage towards success in the marketplace. Every generation, of course, faces new challenges, thinking that, oh, I'll hide from it. I don't want to know from that. That's not a successful strategy generally in the marketplace. Markets change, and you have to be sensitive to change, and you have to be flexible and ready to move with things. I'm thinking about these young women and their own personal goals. And, again, I mentioned shidduchim. Do they plan on marrying someone who's going to work, or planning on marrying someone who's going to be learning? So that has different earning requirements for themselves, for their own career goals. And so a lot of the answers, though, will come from their own family values and then realistic goals that they can make for themselves. We sometimes get a family where a young woman comes and she's introverted and she's quiet and she has some skills, but she's not a big go-getter. And so, how in the world is she going to earn all this money to support her husband and learning, etc.? That's a tough one to crack. Okay, so you have to be realistic about setting goals according to who your daughter is and what does she want from life and what can she do. So you do have to be realistic about that. And there are many cases where career counselors can help. Not everybody needs a career counselor. Some girls have really a great degree of clarity on what they want to do and they're good at it. And so they're ready to hit the ground running, whether they're coming home with a college degree or they're going to get one or they have skills. She's a baker and she wants to open her bakery. There could be lots of things where it's really clear the next steps, but oftentimes it's not. And so when it's not, you sometimes may want to turn to a professional to gain insight. Okay. So I do want to share with you something that the U.S. Department of Labor uses to categorize different professional inclinations in individuals. And I'm talking about it here in order to think about educational pathways that we're going to decide where to study based on our decision of what we want to do or what we're good at and what we're inclined to do. So this system of thought is called Holland. There was a Professor Holland, and there are six categories, like in this hexagon, and and all of them are changing based on technology. So let me go down the list. It starts with realistic, people who are doers. And so these are people are practical, concrete. It could be hair and nails, it could be catering, it could be fixing things. And so learning technology is important. But again, it's very hands-on. Those people probably don't need a college degree whatsoever. And before I go further, I'm speaking now about investigative. And I wrote here a bachelor's degree or a master's or even a PhD. But the truth is, this has happened outside of our community. The role of college has changed entirely. And as we've seen all the terrible stuff happening on college campuses in the US, there's been a shift where the things you need to earn a living are not necessarily available on campus or even through getting a college degree online or through any other means. And even there are many wonderful from college programs that are fine. They're very expensive, and some of them may be worth it if you want to become a social worker or do occupational therapy or physical therapy or something like that. So you may need to get a college degree in that field. And so then you want to think about, what are my options? Are there from colleges like that? Am I going to live at home? How am I going to do that? But there are many opportunities today that don't run through college at all. And that's what we've built our courses on. Our courses are in technology. We have a course in digital marketing and we have a course in cybersecurity. And both those fields, as in many other fields, you don't need a college degree. It's a nice credential if you have it, but what you need are skills. And these skills can be acquired through online courses. Okay, so whether it's our course or another course, but a lot of the value today in the marketplace that a job candidate is going to bring to an interview or put on their resume is not their college degree, but the skills that they have, because high tech, the technology is sophisticated. And so people who have taken the time to master the technology and know how to do things are very valuable. Okay. So whether you're artistic and it's web design or graphics, um, whether you're social and you want to help people or teach people, there are many young women who are enterprising, which means they like to convince people, they like to be the boss, they're going to go into business or perhaps law. So if they want to open a business, again, a college degree is not necessarily a prerequisite. There are conventional people, scorekeepers. I myself am like that, who are bookkeepers. There's medical billing, and there are other opportunities, again, that don't necessarily require a college degree. So my point is that there are today, Baruch Hashem, from ways to get a college degree, and that's fine. But that's not necessarily going to be the key to earning a living. And so whether or not you want to make that investment and go that route should be the result of your thoughts of, well, what career do I plan on pursuing? And what career you plan on pursuing has to do with who you are and what you're about and what are your inclinations? Where do you want to be and how do you want to work? So these are personal questions that you want to discuss with your daughter and have your daughter think about in order to make a little bit of a longer term goal. And then you can figure out, okay, what do we need to do to get the credentials, the education in order to get to that place? Okay, let me go on. Entering the workforce. So here I want to also talk about specifically about AI as a major factor in changing the job market. Today, it's not that AI has killed so many jobs, but the jobs that are available, the boss is going to in interviewing the candidate say, do you know how to use AI? And I'll tell you, as a teacher this year, the girls definitely knew how to use AI. And so if I wanted them to do assignments, they would put it on AI and turn it in. So if I wanted to avoid that, we took the final test pen and paper without computers, so that there was no AI there. But AI is not a bad thing. AI, artificial intelligence, is a very powerful tool that can be harnessed to create value and to create professionalism. So the people that learn how to use it have a great leg up on the competition in applying for any job. So I wanted to share some ideas. One is called the gig economy. The gig economy, a gig is like a musical engagement. You go and you do a gig. But today, a lot of jobs are like a gig, a one-time thing. Whereas instead of having a long career, you're going to work for a few decades in the same place. That could happen in a school or in certain opportunities. But a lot of times there's going to be a little bit here and a little bit there. And that's just part of the whole what's called the VUCA world, that the world is volatile and uncertain and complex. So in this complicated world, you have to have flexibility and recognize that your earning capacity may be divided up in different places, and you may do a little bit here, a little bit there. That's why I put this graphic of the side hustle, of I'm doing something on the side to make some extra money in addition to a job that gives me a place to go every day and something that fulfills my professional purpose. Internships is a really good way for young people to begin. If they knock on the door of a store or a business or whatever it is and say, I'd like to work for you for free for a month and learn the ropes. So that's a very attractive offer for someone to have, free help. That's a really good way to get your foot in the door, to learn something, and then there's a greater likelihood to get hired down the road. Soft skills, writing a resume, conducting an interview, communication skills. A lot of times when we're dealing with yeshiva guys or Beis Yaakov women, so they're outsiders to a certain degree to certainly a secular environment or a non-Jewish environment, but they should recognize the strengths that they're bringing. They're coming with a very strong sense of ethics, with a sense of responsibility. I'm part of a big family. I know what it is to make things happen, to lead a group, and so forth. So to find valuable employment skills within my personal history and development, and then to communicate that to a potential employer can be a valuable way to enter the workforce. I want to give some attention to protecting Torah values in the workforce because that is a challenge certainly for all of us. We're in this world, for nisyonis. And so I want to speak about tznius, for example, in a modern environment, if we're speaking about young women. And so, like I mentioned earlier, that age matters. I do at some point, as a professional, a person is probably going to want to have a LinkedIn account, but that could be a decision that I'm not going to have my professional LinkedIn account until maybe a little bit later in my career, or I'm better established, or I'm married, whatever. But let's talk particularly about creating boundaries with strength and dignity. And I want to give a great example of a young woman. She took our cybersecurity course, and she was in Europe, and she got an excellent job as an ethical hacker. in a non-Jewish company. And she very successfully, and she talked to our students about this, she communicated to her coworkers, and her coworkers had veto power on her getting hired. They took a vote of 6 people who she was going to be working on their team that they wanted to hire her. So she's very personable. She has a lovely personality and she's very intelligent, but she's very clear on her Frumkeit. And these are non-Jews in Belgium, so she told them, I'm a nerd. I don't want to socialize with you. I respect you, and I ask that you respect me. You guys want to go out to drink beer? That's fine. I'm not going to come because I'm here focused on my work, and my values are my family and my religion and so forth. And because she said that as a mature young adult, so they're fine with that, and they respect that. And so she's established boundaries in her workplace through her own strength and dignity. So of course that takes a certain gestalt, a certain wherewithal that not every 20-year-old young woman has, but it is something to learn. That if you're proud of where you're coming from, and we certainly have nothing to be ashamed of, we have everything to be proud of, the values, the mores, the hanhagas of our community. So when you project that sense of self-confidence, and yes, I'm a frum Jew, and the Torah is a wonderful thing, it gives so much beauty and value and meaning to our lives, other people will respect that. And Shabbos is an issue. If you're working certainly in a non-Jewish environment, you have to talk about that. And I've heard a number of wonderful stories about that. There was a woman who worked for Facebook, and she told her boss that I need to go home on Fridays early in order to light candles. And he says, for sure, you have to, close up shop at noon on Friday and do this. This is what gives you meaning. So creating boundaries is important. I want to talk about source of strengths because there are inevitably many challenges for young women and young men working um, in whatever situation, whether they're in a mixed situation or not, but the challenges that they're going to face because they're coming from being a student and a young person, and they're becoming adults. And adults' lives are full of stresses and challenges. So you want to develop within the young people a source of strength and how they're going to deal with these stresses and challenges. So certain sources of strength are their relationships to their parents, and not everything can you always talk about with your parents. You want to have open communication channels, but I think it's also understandable that not every topic do I want to speak to my parent, but maybe I have a favorite aunt or an older sibling who I can relate to. I have a mentor, somebody who I've met along the way, one of my rebbeim or a rebbitzin who I have a special connection. The very fact that I'm part of a community, the fact that there are people maybe 20 years ahead of me or 10 or 15 that are role models for me. These are all sources of strength that a young professional, an aspiring professional who's dealing with new situations that they've never dealt with before, but they have with whom to speak about. Because if you have a woman, for example, you have a couple and he's learning in Koilel and she's in, a mixed environment as a computer programmer, and she feels, it's not an environment of Kedusha, right? It's very much the opposite. She needs someone to talk to for her to bottle that up inside, and she's afraid to share with her husband because he's a Kli Kodesh and she's in a very different place. But there has to be an openness, an honesty of recognizing, yes, this is a nisayon. Am I ready to do this? Do I want to do this? Do I have to do this? How am I going to deal with that? And then finding people and sources of strength, rebbeim, again, families and other relationships, in order to deal with it so that it doesn't explode, because it could explode. So you want to manage the situation. There's an expression: you never want to become a passenger in your own plane. Okay, you want to navigate. You want to fly the plane. You need to think about how am I going to manage these challenges and these difficult parshios. So open communications with the relevant parties, with your spouse, parents, siblings, community members are helpful in dealing with these challenges. And the last idea I wanted to share on this is career training in a frum environment can be a bridge to a frum career. So that's something that we offer, for example, that students who take our courses, and we're trying to help them bridge and help place them. So we have a whole network, an ecosystem of frum businesses in the US and in Israel and even in Europe to a certain degree, where we're helping people stay within the community in their employment after they've been there through their education. That they can understand that I don't need to leave the community, and certainly I don't need to leave my values or my frömmigkeit when I step onto a platform that I need to earn a living. True, but that doesn't need to mean to compromise your values or necessarily to leave the community. So that's for sure something to think about in choosing educational pathways. Where am I going to get my education in order to continue my career in that direction? Because a lot of times people find their first job through their educational institution. So making a careful choice about an educational institution is an important first step towards finding a good from career. So I wrote here that success is not guaranteed. That's sort of obvious, but it is achievable. Okay. And my wife recently shared with me that it's the same question in shidduchim, that are people looking for that one guy, or are they looking for someone with whom they can build a bias neman? Are you looking for the job, the one thing, or are you looking for an opportunity to grow? So if we think about our career as a garden, and we're going to fertilize, and we're going to plow, we're going to sow, we're going to water it, knowing that man di yoiv chai, yoiv mezoine, the one who gives life, gives parnasa. So there are opportunities. The international economy is open, and today, particularly because of the internet and technology, there are new opportunities that we have that in previous generations they didn't, because you were in a certain geographic location and maybe you didn't want to leave the community. Today, there's a global village. And so that global village, of course, has temptations and challenges. And of course, we're big believers in filtering the internet and so forth. That's very important. But on the other hand, the upside, the opportunities that have been created by technology, that our young people, there's also another distinction between internet natives and internet immigrants. So I and the parents here, we are immigrants to the internet because we didn't have it growing up. But our children, who they've had it growing up to whatever degree they were exposed to it or interacted with it, but it has existed during their whole lifetime. Like my kids ask me, wait, when you grew up, you didn't have the internet? So no, we didn't. So today's young people are, it's part of their world, and that gives them an empowerment and a familiarity with the technology that if they master specific skills, they can then leverage those skills to earn a really nice living based on their own mission and who they are. So the idea that a Kodesh Baruch Hu gives each and every person the capacity to support themselves is part of our foundational beliefs. So by clarifying one's personal mission, what am I about? What do I want to be? What are my values? As a parent, you don't need or want to manage that process. You want to be a guide, not a manager. So you want to ask good questions. You want to challenge and open things up towards towards your child in order to help them think through the issues and set realistic goals. And as an observer of the growth of your child, and you're an invested and loving observer, you want to celebrate their victories and their efforts, not just their outcomes. So in applying for jobs is difficult for anybody, and it takes time to get a job. It takes not days or weeks, it takes months. And so sending a CV is a cause for a celebration. It's a victory to send out a good CV, or having a good job interview. Even if you don't get that job, you want to celebrate good efforts, even if they don't necessarily lead to winning outcomes today. If you do the right thing long enough, you will be successful, b'siyata d'shmaya. There was a great golfer that, they said some of his shots are lucky, and he said it's true. But what I find is the more I practice, the luckier I get. So if you do a lot of the right things, you set really clear and realistic goals, and you get the education that you need to achieve a position in a field that you have natural inclination, that you enjoy it, and you're good at it, and it's something that the market appreciates and pays for, so then you're in a very good direction. that Seifo covered Lovo, that it should work out well for you, that although the success is not guaranteed, but it is indeed achievable. I wanted to give some real life examples from people we know, people in our programs, people we've given counseling to. I give the example of Shira and my own daughter-in-law, Shira. She's a real go-getter. There's, some really smart and tough young women. And in Israel, there's an emphasis on learning computer programming. The girls in Beis Yaakov, they all learn Tichnut. And so she wants to work in Tel Aviv. She wants to be a CTO, the head of the technology in some company in Tel Aviv. So she's there and she's in the game. And American girls, maybe they want to work in the big city and be part of whether the world of finance or of technology. That's a way, okay? Now that's certainly not for everybody. There are others. We had a young woman who took our course in digital marketing named Perry. And Perry works for her uncle. She's very much still within the community, working for a from company, but she's bringing to them capabilities in AI, in digital marketing that her uncle has no idea. He knows he needs it, but he doesn't know where to get it. So here he has his own niece, a Beis Yaakov woman, who's taken our course and acquired, the cutting edge skills to do the digital marketing for her uncle's company. And so she's very happy with that. My third example is a woman who I have a lot of respect for her. I think she's the mother of eight or something. She lives in Beitar. Her name is Malia. And Malia took our cybersecurity course. And she told me she's not looking for a full-time job. She's working for a part-time job. So she works from home in a part-time job in Beitar, Israel, for a New York cyber company. And she came out, they said, okay, write us a report on what does a company need to do to comply with all the relevant regulations. She's a great learner. She's a really bright woman. And so she has, Baruch Hashem, a dream job for herself where she's earning American salary and living in Israel and working part-time from home. So my point here is that there are different strokes for different folks, different pathways for different people based on their values and their situation. We haven't lost the idea of the Yiddish Mama and the idea that the Iker is Torah mitzvahs, and for a Jewish woman, her family, her children, her husband, her relationships, those are key. That's king. But there are economic realities and there are personal realities of earning a parnasa in a way that doesn't stare. It doesn't make me miserable. I'm doing something where I don't feel, oh, this is a waste. Like I'm just a secretary and I want to do more. We've had a lot of students come to us, women in their 30s or 40s, who felt there's just no way for me to grow in my job. I've been doing this for a decade or two, and it's not getting me any advancement. So technology is a way to get advancement even in mid-career by learning new skills that are valuable in the market. And so then people can fulfill a certain sense of self-fulfillment in addition to providing parnasa and again, maintaining their own values. So in conclusion, you want to help your daughter thrive with confidence and Torah values, recognizing that every path is unique. You want to be there for her, to be present in her life and supportive without being domineering. Kadosh Baruch Hu is Kenesher Yair Kino. He's Mirachef. Hashem gives us space. He doesn't crush. If the mother bird would come down hard on the nest, so she'd crush the birds. So you want to be there as a parent. They talked today about hovering, not being a helicopter parent. But my point is that you definitely want to give space. You want to open up questions to help your child think, look within themselves, and see what do they want, where are they going, and based on long-term goals, then to make practical steps. Okay, so then what educational pathways do we need to do to achieve those goals? It's not going to happen in a week, a month, or a year. This is a long-term plan. So I may have to have some jobs that maybe there'll be minimum wage or doing some simple, maybe blue collar stuff or maybe simple, bookkeeping stuff. But I'm on the pathway to grow and to gain more skills. And the last thing I want to say is like I said earlier, not everybody needs career counseling or professional guidance, but some people do, and there's certainly no shame in that. And it's wise to do so. So we are here to offer career counseling. We have our courses in digital marketing, AI-based digital marketing, and our course in cybersecurity. I'll be happy to take any questions now if you have, or to entertain any discussion you might have on the topics I discussed. I'd be happy to hear from you.
Hi, I have a question.
Please.
Um, so you were talking about how nowadays it's more important to sort of to be able to show on your resume that you have certain skills rather than just here's the fact that I have a college degree. Now, at least I'm a little younger. I'm not a lot younger than you, but I'm a little younger than you. But at least like sort of when I was growing up, the conventional wisdom was that even though it might be true that you could acquire certain job skills outside of a college framework, but you need the degree almost as like a signaling device. Like you can trust that I know something and that I'm smart. Hooray! I have this college degree. So are you sort of are you saying that like the market has changed in that way that people don't even worry about a college degree anymore? Show me that you have like this course that you took over the course of several weeks, months, whatever, that's enough?
So it definitely depends. Okay. Um, there is the mindset that you mentioned that, look, I'm not a total idiot. I have a college degree. I'll give you an example. We actually had a course in teaching English as a foreign language to Chinese children. Okay. There's actually an industry for this because the Chinese want their kids to know English. And so there's a bunch of Chinese companies which employ native English speakers, men and women, to speak English to little Chinese kids. But here's the thing, you had to have a college degree. Now, you obviously did not need a college degree to speak English to Chinese kids, but they wanted to weed out, the beer drinking public and only have college graduates working for them. So there for sure are situations where, as a credential, you need a college degree. So I'm definitely not denying that. But I am saying that there are a number of fields today where the skills are the key. And in fact, in many of the college programs, they don't teach the necessary skills. They teach about this or the history of that, but they don't grant you the skills that you need. So I'm sure you're familiar. There's a number of from ways to get a college degree, whether through TTI or through taking clefts, and some of the seminaries have college programs, and there's some, online degrees which are available. So those are all good things. I'm definitely not against any of those things. And like you said, there are some places where you may need that. But my answer is that there are other situations where technology is king and skills are king. And so whether that's in cybersecurity or it's in digital marketing or other fields where certainly the realistic professions, if a young woman is going to go into hair or nails or into catering or running some sort of business, people who are business oriented, they may want to take some courses, whether it's in accounting or in finance or in marketing, but they don't really need, I don't need to tell you that a college degree is very, very expensive. And so is it worth $50,000 to get that credential that's not really going to give me the skills that create value? Okay. So, you recounted that there are situations where you need a college degree to show you're not an idiot. And that exists. So again, it's a question of where are you going? Where is this young person going in their career goals? I have a wonderful daughter-in-law who's a real tough cookie. And believe it or not, she's raking it in. She's earning much more than I am. And she does not have any college degree, but she's great in sales. She's sort of bossy and tough and businesslike, and she knows what she wants, and she goes and she gets it. So that's my point, that there are situations where you need a college degree, and there are situations where you don't. Okay.
Very good.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I will just put up in closure. I'll put up my our our website. And how did I get to that? Here I am. Okay, there it is. Office at careerwise.info is our email, and our website is careerwise.info. So we'd be happy to hear from you. And looking forward to hearing from you and wishing you much bracha, batzlacha, nachas, mikol yotzei chalatzeichem, shenizke biyachad, to do wonderful things for Klal Yisrael. Thank you so much for being here.